And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this amazing segment today. Well, it's a beautiful day out there in Brisbane, as you can see behind me. Of course, it's so wonderful to have your company once again. This is Australian Indian Radio production, streaming live via Gentex Multimedia directly to your device. It's once again wonderful to have you on this Tuesday. Well, thank you so much for all the comments and the sharing in many of the groups. And I'd like to place on record my appreciation for many admins of the group who allow us to share our feed onto this, because this is what it is about. If you have a group, you'd like to share the news and information with your members. You don't want to deprive them of that, do we? Well, right now, let's move on. There's so much to get through today. First of all, let's join our Premier and as he talks about the flu vaccinations.
981 tests in the past 24 hours, which is, of course, really good news. Now, today we've had our flu vaccine. As I said last week, we would be getting our flu vaccine, and in around 2 weeks' time, we'll be getting our COVID vaccine. Now, just a week ago, it was opened up to over 50s in Queensland, and I encourage everyone, get your flu shots and then to go and get your COVID vaccine. Also, in addition, what we'll be doing from the end of July, we'll be opening up 14 community hubs across Queensland, and of course this will gradually grow towards the end of the year. And this will be open to the general public aged 40 to 49. That'll be the next age group we'll be looking at. We already have 4 opened in Central Queensland City Campus, Mackay, Bundaberg TAFE, Hervey Bay TAFE and Maryborough City Hall. There'll be 3 more in South East Queensland in the coming weeks, and 7 more will be determined over the next few weeks as well. So, as we know, the rollout will gather pace as more and more supply comes on hand, and I just want to thank everyone out there for doing the right thing. And of course, when it comes to keeping Queenslanders safe, it's very important that if you have any symptoms whatsoever to go and get tested. So I'll hand over to Dr. Young and then to Yvette. Now, Yvette has had her flu vaccine at a pharmacy, so you can get your flu vaccine at pharmacies as well. And I'll hand over to Dr. Young.
So, I've just had my flu vaccine, and in 2 weeks' time I will be getting the COVID vaccine, and for my age group and my situation, that will be AstraZeneca. So the first time that general Queenslanders, and I regard myself as part of that cohort, I'm not a frontline healthcare worker, could access the vaccine was last Monday from their GP. My GP is now giving AstraZeneca vaccine, so that's what I'll be doing. I recommend strongly that every single person in Queensland, if you're 50 years of age or over, talk to your GP about what is the right thing for you to do. Any queries at all. Now, I'd like to briefly mention that Victoria has announced that they believe they have 2 new cases in the northern part of Melbourne. So anyone in Queensland today who has recently been in Melbourne, particularly those northern suburbs, in the last 14 days and has any symptoms at all, no matter how mild, would you please immediately come forward and get tested and isolate until you get a negative result. And we'll just follow, of course, very closely what's happening in Victoria. Thank you.
And of course, it is very, very important that we follow what's been happening in Victoria. As we know, all it takes is one case, and then it all starts spreading. So, hope that everyone will do the right thing. So, talking about that situation in Victoria, the borders. So, how long should these borders remain closed?
It's the single biggest COVID-19 health measure that's still in place, our closed international borders. They're keeping us in, stranded Aussies and tourists out, and having a huge impact on the tourism industry. And we want it to stay that way. 79% of us agree that Australia should keep its international borders shut until the COVID-19 pandemic is under control globally. There's overwhelming agreement in all age groups and states, and we want the borders to stay shut. It's not like we think this pandemic will be under control anytime soon. We asked how long people expect before things get back to normal, and around 20% of us thought things would be more or less back to normal by early next year. Another fifth of us don't see things being back to normal until at least March 2023, while 8% say things will never be back to normal. With all the ways the world has changed in the past year, perhaps those 8% are right on the money.
Well, let's get more on this with Natasha Kassam, Director of the Lowy Institute's Public Opinion and Foreign Policy Program. Thank you so much for your time and for taking a closer look at these numbers with us. So 79% of respondents support the border staying shut until the pandemic is under control globally, and that's in keeping with other recent polls asking a similar question. What do you put it down to, that very high level of support?
Thanks so much for having me. Look, I do think there are a few things going on here. A lot of people are rightfully scared. You know, they've seen what's happened in other countries. They've seen the way this pandemic can ravage a society, and they're proud of the way Australia has managed under these circumstances. So I think in that context, it's not surprising that the vast majority of Australians are worried about opening up to the world. Having said that, when you dig into these numbers a little bit, I think you do uncover a few different opinions. Some people think that we should be able to open borders if everyone is vaccinated. So we don't know what that's going to look like. We don't know when everybody will be vaccinated. But we understand now, I think, that other countries are getting back to normal when they have those high vaccination rates. The other thing is that I think tough borders has always been good policy in Australia. It's always been quite popular with the public. And so we're playing into those trends while the world is quite scary, and Fortress Australia has always been a pretty popular sentiment.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that 81% of people with European ancestry support the border closure compared to 71% of those with non-European ancestry. Is that because non-white migrants to Australia want to be able to travel to see family overseas?
I think we've seen demographics in Australia change really significantly over the past few decades. 1 in 3 Australians was born elsewhere. There's a huge proportion of the country, as you say, that are linked to family overseas and want to be able to be there with them. So even though I think for a lot of people, the idea of closed borders might mean not going on holidays to Bali, or it might mean restrictions on business travel, I think there are other people where this really means separated families and missing out on really significant life events.
What are the risks of keeping the international border closed, apart from the obvious economic costs?
Australia is a country that is, proud of its history of trade, being open to the world. The vast majority of Australians agree in most polls that immigration is good for our country. It makes us stronger. We pride ourselves on being a multicultural society. So the idea of being closed off from the world, I think, puts a lot of that national identity at risk. Of course,
Australia is a multicultural nation, and we do pride ourselves on that. But of course, the health of the nation also comes first as well. There are certain nationalities who always like to be traveling, and many times for very simple reasons, and sometimes for very genuine reasons, of course. But where do we draw the line? That is the big question. So, well, right, next topic. Next, we talk to Professor Paul Kelly on immunisation.
Over the weekend, we had new advice from ATAGI, the expert group on immunisation, together with the Thrombosis and Hemostasis Society of Australia and New Zealand. They're the experts in Australia and New Zealand on blood clotting. The two of them have got together over the last couple of weeks to just clarify exactly this issue of this rare clotting disorder that has been associated with the AstraZeneca vaccine. Very important that information goes out to GPs and other doctors who are having those discussions with their patients right now, so that they can fully weigh up the risk and benefit of having the vaccine, as well as up-to-date information about this particular rare but sometimes serious disorder. And so the clarification was put there, and I wrote to every doctor in Australia over the weekend just to really make it very clear who can have the AstraZeneca vaccine? And the answer there is almost anyone over the age of 50. There are very few contraindications. That's been narrowed down significantly from this statement.
And I think that is what is happening, as we saw from the first news that our Premier has got a flu vaccination, and in 2 weeks' time, so we'll get the COVID-19 vaccine. And that's a similar case with me, because when I went in, they said you have to have your flu vaccination first, and after 14 days I can get the first shot of the AstraZeneca. So that's the way things are. Well, let's take a report from our Chief Medical Officer.
Vaccinating a COVID complacent nation.
If you are not vaccinated and you catch COVID, you could die. That's the message.
Over 50s can get AstraZeneca now, but concerns over rare blood clots linked to the jab appear to be putting some people off.
Do not wait to get your vaccine. Winter is coming.
5.5 million COVID-19 vaccines have been distributed across the country. So far, 3.6 million of those have been put into people's arms. That means there are nearly 2 million doses available in GP and vaccination clinics that are yet to be administered.
The biggest impact.
And of course, they are still waiting there. And as we said yesterday, the doctor said they have the vaccination. They're waiting for people to come forward. And there are reports from people who said they have contacted their GPs and they have been put on a waiting list. Now, of course, getting the message out there. When we talk about Australia, and many people say that a nation that is complacent with this policy, why is that so? Some people are comparing some overseas countries where there have been mass campaigns by some very prominent people within the community to say that, vaccination is good, you need to go out and get the vaccination done. So has our campaign been strong enough or not?
Australia has a pretty good track record when it comes to community advertising campaigns aimed at changing behaviours.
Nah, I don't think I can quit.
I don't think I can operate.
But the COVID campaigns have been criticised as pedestrian and not hitting the mark and adapting to changing attitudes to COVID vaccination.
COVID-19 vaccines continue to roll out to those most at risk.
I'm afraid to say that the present campaign just is not cutting it.
Mind you, to be fair, the vaccine rollout has had unforeseen challenges as well.
At the current time, the use of the Pfizer vaccine is preferred over the AstraZeneca vaccine in adults aged less than 50 years.
Associate Professor Margie Danchin is an immunisation researcher who has today released a comprehensive report on COVID vaccine hesitancy.
We've been doing a lot of qualitative research, listening to community leaders, faith leaders, Indigenous people. It's really clear to me that, their concerns can be allayed. And again, it's mostly around that TTS syndrome. But people want to interpret that risk in terms of their own personal eligibility and their own underlying medical conditions. And that takes a conversation, it takes engagement and really good vaccine communication skills.
If you think about a path to getting vaccinated, which is the behaviour itself, it's the action, then you've got the way people think and feel about vaccination, social influences, and those both influence people's motivations to vaccinate or not.
Professor?
Or not, that's correct. And of course, the messages really need to go out there, and some key people need to come out and say, hey, it is okay, and that they have had their jab as well. So I think a lot has been said, but not a lot has been done yet. So, there's many multicultural media outlets which could come in handy. There's so many community organizations which could, assist in that as well. Some very key personal people could be, utilized to get that message out there.
Professor Catherine Bennett is the Chair of Epidemiology at Deakin University. Professor, the 4 cases, is there any relationship between the small increase that we've seen today?
We're looking at the cases in Victoria.
Exposure site that was given by Victoria Health?
We don't know that yet, Lee. We do look at a pattern here that suggests these cases are linked back to that gentleman who picked up the virus in hotel quarantine in South Australia. We don't know yet whether the exposure might have happened through that supermarket, there was that confusion over the supermarket, and that might have meant we missed some case or two in between, or whether this is another chain altogether that didn't actually pass through that supermarket. So we're not yet sure. We haven't got confirmation about the link, but assuming that is where the source came from, we've got to rule out, I guess, whether the supermarket, that would be nice in a way. If they trace it back to the supermarket, they're in a better position to actually try and close this down quickly.
Yes, tracing to the right source is very, very important, and that is why all the check-ins, and when you go into any place to use those check-in apps, and the QR code is very, very important, so that it could be traced to where it's originated from. Well, let's hear from Victoria's Health Minister.
This morning, the Department of Health was advised of 2 positive cases of COVID-19 in Melbourne's northern suburbs, both of whom reside in the city of Whittlesea. Case 1 presented for testing on the 23rd of May, yesterday, due to symptoms he was experiencing, which he had, it would appear, from the 20th of May onwards. He was joined at the testing centre by case 2, a male relative who was asymptomatic. We put public health actions in place, including isolating and testing of all of those family members. As a result of those tests, a further 2 positive tests amongst those family members have been identified.
So another 2 cases have been identified, and we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll follow up on that report. Well, right now it's time to take a look at a message from our sponsors.
GlobeNet Realty. GlobeNet Realty has been the longest established, trusted and respected agency in its trade area. Washa Chandra, Director of GlobeNet Realty, provides honest and ethical service to her customers. If you are thinking of investing in Brisbane real estate market, or if you are seeking professional property management, then you should contact Usha Chandra today on landline 3865 4466 or mobile 0419 775 416. And for further updates, log on to our website www.globenetralty.com.au. GlobeNet Realty is your own local real estate agency. Situated at Shop 52281 Sandgate Road, Boondall. GlobeNet Realty. Real estate is our world.
And real estate is the world. And don't forget that every Wednesday we have the real estate update with Usha Chandra right here in this studio, where we discuss all the property trends, all the latest figures, the auction results, open houses, and the number of sales, the price changes, and the median prices, and all of those right here. So don't forget that it is on all the Wednesdays that we have the real estate update with Usha Chandra. Well, right now, moving on with the news, we'll go overseas. This time we go to Samoa, where the first female Prime Minister has been locked out of the Parliament House.
Locked out of Parliament with no explanation. Members of the opposition Fast Party were forced to hold their own swearing-in ceremony under a marquee instead.
It's very important that our members are sworn in, because there are 26 of us, so we can form government.
But the man who is currently Prime Minister is furious, determined not to relinquish the power his party has held for nearly 4 decades.
Only the head of state and no one else can call parliamentary meetings and swear people in. None of what they did is legitimate.
Samoa has gone through a tumultuous 2 months since polls first opened. The election result was a tie between the 2 major parties, with an independent candidate taking the remaining seat. But the Electoral Commissioner later intervened, using a law meant to ensure that more women served in Parliament. So another female member was appointed, one representing the HRPP. The next day, the independent candidate announced he would support the opposition Fast Party, Days later, the Prime Minister pushed for a re-election for May 21st. But last week, the Supreme Court ruled against both the additional female candidate and plans for another election, meaning the Fast Party had a majority. The daughter of Samoa's first Prime Minister, Fiume, is set to make history as the country's first female leader. But with the incumbent Prime Minister refusing to concede, neighbouring countries are nervously watching how this will play out. Australia's Foreign Minister Maurice Payne tweeting, "It is important that all parties respect the rule of law and democratic processes."
Well, rule of law and democratic processes need to be followed, and it will be interesting to see what happens. History could be made there when the first female Prime Minister of Samoa, if she is sworn in. Well, of course, right now we'll go to the by-election in the Upper Hunter Valley, and of course we know the results that happened there. Did coal have a role to play in that?
The Nationals have really thrown everything at this campaign.
Voters stuck with the Nationals and turned away from Labor in favour of minor parties and independents.
The Nats are back. The Nats are back.
We will do some really genuine soul searching about where to from here.
Upper Hunter is a state by-election.
What Labor's going to have to look at is themselves. You can't just replace the jockey. The horse is broken.
They say we talk the talk but don't walk the walk.
If you want to allocate state results on federal seats, I'd ask you to have a look at Western Australia and have a look at Queensland.
The responses to the weekend by-election in the New South Wales state seat of Upper Hunter contained the usual run of claims on such occasions about what the election result is supposed to tell us about broader political trends. This particular by-election also had the added spice of being in a coal seat, when coal remained such a contentious issue for many voters. But the first thing you need to know about the Upper Hunter result is that the by-election saw votes splattered all over the place among the 13 candidates vying for 56,000 votes. The second thing you need to know is that the two major parties managed to pick up just over half the total primary votes between them. These were the primary votes at the previous state election in 2019, where the Shooters candidate was the best performer among the minor parties. The two major party candidates from the Nationals and Labor managed to attract 62.6% of the first preference vote between them. This time, the combined vote for minor parties surged, with One Nation and moderate independent Kirsty O'Connell joining the field, eating some of the Shooters' lunch. But look at the combined vote for the two majors, 62.6% last time, just 51.5% this time. In other words, half of voters did not vote for a major party. What's more, the optional preferential voting system in New South Wales saw 63% of voters not give preferences to other parties, meaning a huge number of votes went to the minor parties and stayed there. Amidst all the noise, there are a few things that stand out. The Nationals, who have held the seat for 90 years, suffered a small drop in their primary vote to around 31%.
And we knew it was tough.
Labor has lost a quarter of its supporters since the last state election, crashing to just 21.3% of the primary vote. Independent Kirsty O'Connell, who was the only candidate calling for a move away from coal, picked up almost 9% of the vote. And that raises the whole question of what role coal actually played in the seat, and what that means for federal Labor. Maverick veteran Labor MP Joel Fitzgibbon was certainly framing the result as a warning to his party today.
Well, of course, looking at those results, we have the by-election, coming up in Queensland, seat of Stratton, and as we know yesterday that Jim Bellows has been announced as the candidate. Comes from a very strong multicultural backing, because he has been a very popular person there in the multicultural community. So that will be interesting to see how that pans out. Well, right now it's time to look at some of the functions and events, and as we know that yesterday was one of the biggest citizenship ceremony by Brisbane City Council, and it was held at the Brisbane Entertainment and Convention Centre. Over 900 people received their citizenships, and there were so many people in there. Anyone's guess would be there would have been around 2,000 people there, and of course the good part we are in Queensland, so the event was mask-free.
Welcome everyone, we are Tribal Experiences. Yes, you can clap if you want.
Event is one of the biggest that we've had, the biggest citizenship ceremonies we've had here since 2013, would you believe? So for many, many years, it's just fantastic to see such a large event with so many people officially coming into the Brisbane family, the Australian family. These events happen approximately every 4 to 6 weeks, and they are genuinely one of the favourite parts of being the Lord Mayor of Brisbane, to welcome new people into our local community and to see in your eyes the hope and optimism and the joy that you have for being here on this special occasion. It is something that I'm grateful that I get to share with you, and I speak on behalf of Nina and also Andrew Wines as well to say that it is a very special part of our job to hold these ceremonies and to officially welcome you here. Australian citizenship is something that is more than a simple decision, it is a commitment. And it's a commitment that so many people have made from so many different parts of the world.
And of course, it's a commitment that's been made by so many different people from different parts of the world. And as we know, the keynote speaker yesterday at the event was from Kenya, and she spoke very well. And there she is with a certificate of citizenship with Lord Mayor, her husband. So it is wonderful to see so many people yesterday receive their citizenship, and of course everyone in the hall then afterwards affirming their citizenship rights and liberties as well. Well, right now it's time to go and take a look at some of the functions and events taking place here in Brisbane. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to talk about Gopia Queensland's mental health awareness seminar, which is taking place this Saturday, and it is about time that we did have this conversation. So, there's so much that's happening out there in the community, and it is a small nominal fee of $15, which includes, food from Kulcha Culture. So, please do register for the event. You can find the registration link on our website and, of course, on our Facebook page as well, Australian Indian Radio. And please do register for this very, very important awareness. People many times might not recognize so many symptoms that are out there. So recognition of the symptoms is very, very important. So if we can find out what exactly is happening, if we can identify the symptoms, then we can be cured, because many times we are unable to identify those symptoms because we gradually grow into it. So it is very important to come to this health awareness seminar. Of course, we take our health very, very seriously. We are all health fanatics. People go to the gyms and everything like that to be physically fit. But are we mentally fit as well? We need to find out when we have this conversation. So I'd like to see you all on Saturday at the Queensland Multicultural Centre at 102 Main Street in Kangaroo Point. This mental health awareness seminar organised by Gopia Queensland. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for today. It's been wonderful having your company as usual. And, of course, there's so much to talk about. And we also are mindful of the time restraints as well. So we'd like to bring to you all the latest that's happening out in the community. If you have any functions or events that you'd like to talk about and feature, or if you have any community issues that you'd like to talk about, if there's any subject that you'd like to bring out here, we'd like to welcome you. This is your station. You are quite welcome to come on and have a discussion, get the message out to the community through Australian Indian Radio. Well, once again, it's been wonderful having your company. So good to see you. Until tomorrow, it's goodbye from me. Please remain safe.